Guess I can't talk in the background.
What's up, kids? It is V, and we are back. Today we are back reading some more Ouija board stories because that is what creeps me out, and that is what I want, apparently. So, there we are. Our first story is called Ethan of Venus. The story is about my personal experiences regarding the Ouija board. But it also has something to do with extraterrestrials. It was July 1964, and we were living in the historic town of St. Thomas Mount, Indiana. It was a... There's a fly, sorry. It was about 8:30 p.m., and I had just come home from work. As I entered the dining room to get a drink of water, my Uncle George and Auntie Theo spoke to me excitedly. "Peter," they exclaimed together, "you won't believe who we have on the board right now." The board they were referring to was the Ouija board. Auntie Theo was visiting from Calcutta, and Uncle George was visiting from a few streets away. The Ouija board was their hobby. Uncle's wife did not approve of his messing around with the occult, so our place was the venue of choice. My mum, their sister, was more tolerant. This spirit on the board called himself Ethan. Remember this name distinctly, and claimed to be from Venus. I was crazy about astronomy and all things extraterrestrial, hence the reaction when I walked in. However, I was not overly excited. After all, any entity can say it's from Venus or any other planet. Then, Ethan broke into our short conversation to inform us that the singer, Jim Reeves, had just died in a plane crash. He went on to spell out the news that they hadn't found the wreckage yet, and it would be a couple days before the news was made public. Jim Reeves' songs were more popular in India in the 60s. About 5 months later, in December 1964, Theo's brother-in-law Oscar paid us a visit from Calcutta. While we were chatting about family matters, he noticed a picture of a sailing ship on the calendar and picked it up for a closer look. We held our breaths because on the back of the calendar Uncle George had painted the letters of the Ouija board, and Oscar found it. After an embarrassing silence, he turned to me and said, "Peter, Ella, my cousin in Calcutta, and Kathleen, a relative of Oscar, were also fooling with this thing back home, and claimed they had heard from a guy from Venus. While he was still communicating with them, Jim Reeves died. We were probably one of the very first to know of his death." As you imagine, there was a stunned silence. Then it was Oscar's turn to be surprised. "Was his name Ethan?" I asked. It was. More than 800 miles away, this same person with the unusual name, from Venus? About 3 months later, in early 1965, Oscar paid us another visit. This trip was to warn Auntie Theo about the board. He told us that one day Kathleen's husband got home earlier than expected and found her naked, with the letters of the Ouija board inked onto her bare body. She was operating the board on her own. She did not recognize her husband and completely had lost her sanity. Kathleen was admitted into a psychiatric hospital. As far as I know, that's where she is today. The Ouija board had claimed another victim. Did Ethan have anything to do with this? If he didn't, he could have warned them about the danger. Sometime around the end of 1973, 9 years later, we had moved to Melbourne, Australia. As we were watching the TV program A Current Affair, the presenter interviewed a Sydney clairvoyant who claimed to be in regular psychic contact with a being from Venus whose name was Ethanus, no idea. I don't know how I'm saying this. Anyway, according to another story, on a September night in 1961 in Prescott, Arizona, a 4-year-old named David was seen by his neighbor in the company of strangers, walking in the woods behind their home. It was around 2 a.m. When questioned later, this little boy explained to his startled father and neighbor that he had gone for a ride in his new friend's big sky car. from which our world looked like a pea. The name of his friend? Ethan. A 4-year-old's pronunciation of Ethan, maybe? To give us an idea of the morals of this Ethan, little David went on to describe how they stole, he used the word milked, all the engine oil out of the neighbor's car, which was locked in the garage. David's story can be read in Ruth Montgomery's fascinating book, Strangers Among Us. I would really love to know if anyone else has heard of or has any more information about Ethan. This next story is called Ouija Warns of a Predator. What I'm going to share with you is very strange. On May 27th, I was playing with the Ouija board, asking questions about the future. The response I got from it was, "Beware, insane man." I did not know what that meant, so I dismissed it. 2 days later, I was getting ready to go to my friend's house when I heard a very deep male voice from somewhere say, "I can see you." I freaked out and realized that I'd left my window open, so I looked outside, but saw no one there. I dismissed it as my mind just playing tricks on me. At 8 p.m., it was already getting dark. So I called my friend to let her know that I was on my way. My mom and I got in the car and drove off. As we were driving, my mom and I saw a man standing on the sidewalk. He was about 5'8" and was wearing black clothes. He had brown hair and brown eyes. He was staring at us and smiling. That itself scared the heck out of me. As we drove by him, I looked behind me and saw this man start to walk slowly towards us. I said to my mom, "Can you drive a little faster?" And she quickly agreed. I looked back again, and he was nowhere to be seen. We went to my friend's house at 9:30. I kissed my mom goodbye, and she drove off. I told my friend about the weird guy standing on the sidewalk. She said, "He must have been a psycho or a drunk." My friend's parents were not home, since they thought that we could take care of ourselves, since we were both 16. We sat down and started to talk about guys and high school. The corner of my eye, I saw a shadow pass by the window, and I told my friend. She checked outside but saw no one. It began to rain, so my friend said, "Hey, do you want me to show you our basement? It's really cool." As we started to go down the stairs, we heard a loud knock coming from the front door. My friend and I went to check it out, and there was no one there. We started to get spooked and sat down in the living room. As I was talking to my friend, we both saw a man standing there outside the window. I told my friend that it was the same weird man that I saw earlier, and we both ran down to the basement. We heard the front door open, and we could hear footsteps. My friend said, "I locked all of the doors and windows. How did he get in?" We heard insane laughter and footsteps coming towards the basement steps. We quickly locked the door leading to my friend's basement. We heard breathing outside the door, and I said, "I'm going to call my mom." As I was talking with my mom, the breathing stopped, and we heard footsteps move away. We quickly went upstairs. Everything was a mess. My mom arrived and saw the front door open. She took my friend and I to her car and told us to remain in the car. She took out her cell phone and she dialed 911. 10 minutes later, the police arrived, and I told them what I saw and what he looked like. It was midnight, and my friend's parents had returned home. While my mom was driving me home, she told me that before she got to my friend's house, she saw the same man walking away from the house. She told me that he was laughing at her as he walked by. All I know is that the Ouija board predicted the future. Scary. I wonder if that one was real. Like, it's so well written that it almost seems not real, which is so interesting. But if it is real, then you did a great job writing that story. I can't deny. Let's move on to the next one. This one is called The Mirror Demon. Honestly, mirrors are so scary, and I often have trouble walking by mirrors at nighttime. And I have this one mirror that stands on its own, and it's just one of those cheap ones from IKEA or Walmart or whatever you want to say. And at nighttime, I literally have to turn it around so that I can't see the actual mirror part because it freaks me out so much. I live in London, UK. I have a friend who's a medium with 3 spirit guides. A few years back, in the late 1990s, I went to visit him on a hot summer afternoon. I knew that he had used the Ouija board and I was quite curious. I usually wouldn't mess with one myself, but I felt safe to ask him if he could show me something. His board was homemade and drawn in permanent black ink on the wooden back of an antique dressing table mirror. He sat on the sofa and I sat opposite on the floor, with my back against the wall, about 6 feet away. He rested the mirror and Ouija board on his... He rested the mirror/Ouija board on his lap and placed a small upturned glass on the board. But he didn't touch the glass. I asked him if he was going to touch it, and he said it would move by itself. We sat for a good 5 to 10 minutes as he tried to meditate or go into a trance. But the neighbors were mowing the lawn, and the guy downstairs' wife was shouting. "Do you want something to drink?" my friend said. Do you want something to drink? My friend said he couldn't concentrate, but would try again later. He leaned the mirror against the wall to his left, and as he sat down he said, "Come on, Robert, where are you?" Robert is his dead cousin. Suddenly, the hairs stood up along my arms, up the back of my neck, and over my head. It felt like time had slowed down, almost standing still. The whole room went different. The angles of the room were all out, and it wasn't a square anymore. It was weird. Then the mirror started shaking violently. I could hear the glass bending, and I thought the mirror was going to shatter. The sunlight was bouncing off the mirror all around the room, and it was also turning toward me. I lifted my arms to shield my face in case it exploded, and it stopped shaking. The surface of the mirror became like a liquid, and 2 hands came out of this mercury, gripped either side of the mirror frame, and began to pull itself out into the room. I thought it was going to climb right out, but it didn't. It just had its upper torso out of the mirror into the room, the shining, liquid mercury shape of a powerful man. It felt like it was looking right into me, at my soul. Then I saw its eyes, 2 flashes of golden light. It spoke to my mind. It said, "We are real." Then it sort of folded back into the mirror in a split second, and the room went normal again, like time had suddenly been unbent and restarted the same as before, with the neighbors busy doing their gardening on a hot summer afternoon. During the experience, my friend couldn't turn around, as he was unable to move. But he heard the glass bending, and he saw the sun's reflection bouncing all over the room as the mirror flexed and shook. He said that he could see it all in his mind's eye, but he was just looking at my face, which I'm sure must have been a picture. I only went back there once, and felt very creepy near the mirror. I forced myself to pick it up and tried to bend it, but the wood must have been over an inch thick and very old, hard oak. I put it down, in case something grabbed me and pulled me into another dimension. That one's by Jerome. Ooh, that one's wild. So scary. You know what? That makes me feel even more scared of mirrors. Because just seeing somebody like crawling out of the mirror, it's a little too much for me to handle. So, let's move on. Abandon. Growing up in a pagan home, ghosts and such were never new to me. I've seen them my entire life. It started when I was 6. My mother had an image of God and Jesus. Where she got it, or who gave it to her, I'm not sure. But I saw demonic faces in the picture all the time. Finally, I told my mother, and she removed it, and that was that. When I was 7, we moved 2 houses down, and things were great for a while. Then weird things started happening. When I was 14, my friend swore up and down that she saw a dark figure behind me in my hallway with a knife raised to my back. It spooked me so much that I would walk with my back to the wall. Anyone who came over would see red, glowing eyes peeking out of my bedroom, and then my door would slam shut. After a while, most of my friends refused to come over. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom because whenever I was in there, I could never sleep. Weird things always happened, so I slept on the family room couch. Let's fast forward a few years. I was 18 and living in Tennessee with my fiancé, Sam, and his mother Gail. This was in 1997. One night, she pulled out her spirit board, not a Ouija board, but some other kind of spirit board. Right away, things started happening. I went into a trance and started talking about Gail's dead sister, whom I've never met or seen a picture of. I described her to a T. Gail asked Sam if I ever saw a picture of her. He said no. So I spoke to her dead sister Linda, and Gail became so upset because there was a gate and a spirit guardian blocking the way and would not let me communicate with her in death. Okay, I'm so sorry. I have to pause because I actually find it really funny that their names are Linda and Gail and that they're sisters because, hello, Bob's Burgers. But that's all I have to say. Gail headed off to bed, and Sam asked me if I wanted to continue. I agreed. We tried for about 20 minutes and no other spirits would come through. So Sam said, I have an idea, and left the room, returning with a genuine Ouija board. This will work, he said. Before starting, he did a protection ritual, but screwed it up. So he had to enter me into the ritual. Right away, 2 girls came through. One was 15, the other 19. They said that they were slave girls who were murdered. I wanted proof, so I asked questions that only the dead would know, and got the right responses, so I was satisfied. Then out of nowhere, they just stopped talking. We tried getting them back, but nothing. Then another presence came through, saying his name was David. We spoke with David for some time, but I started noticing lies. When Sam left the room for a minute to use the bathroom, I confronted David. I said, Your name is not David, and you are lying. He replied, You caught me. I asked, Who are you really? And he responded, Apollyon. Apollyon. I, having no clue who that was, continued to talk to him. Sam returned and I told him what he said. That's not funny, Jen. Knock it off, Sam said. I told him I was dead serious. And through the board, Abandon said, She's right. She's not lying. Sam's eyes got so wide and he looked terrified. We're ending this now, Sam said. Abandon pointed to no. Before Abandon could do anything else, Sam ended it, shoving the pointer to goodbye. I asked him what was wrong, but he wouldn't tell me. Later that night, we were in bed. Sam was reading and I was asleep. I woke to the sound of growling and talking. I looked over to the corner, and there by the closed door was a black-robed figure. I tried to scream, move anything, and I couldn't. For some reason, it chose the Grim Reaper look, scythe and all. He slowly moved towards me until he was sitting on my stomach and pinned me down. I couldn't move, talk, or anything. I was completely terrified. He was sitting there breathing on me, and my first thought was, the dead don't breathe. The entity became distorted and turned into the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He looked completely human, except for those red, goat-like slitted eyes. He smiled at me, bent toward me, and said, You are mine. By this time, I was so scared that I was crying and fighting to move, to say anything to get Sam's attention. That's when the entity told me its name. Now this name I cannot reveal. It's an intimate name, and I had to promise to never tell it to get him to go away. Finally, I was able to move, and I lunged for Sam and told him what happened. He comforted me and told me it would be okay, and for a while, it was. Then one night, Sam's mom sent him to the other home to get things turned on because we were moving. She hated the mobile home. With Sam gone, I refused to sleep in the bedroom, so I set myself up in the living room couch. Around 2 to 3:30 a.m., about 6 hours after Sam left, I had the urge to look at the door, and that was a mistake. There he was again, staring at me. I said loudly to him, You are not welcome. Leave now." He laughed and turned from that skeleton face to the beautiful face with the red, goat-slitted eyes and said to me again, "You are mine. I will have you, no matter what the cost." "No," I yelled, and he laughed and vanished. We moved a short time later, and I didn't see him for a while. Then one night, out of nowhere, there he was. He was very angry, like a jealous lover. He said to me, "You left." I replied, "Yes," and he said, "I've been looking for you." I told him that was too bad. He became angrier and pinned me to the wall and kissed me, telling me I was his. I told him no. Sam came into the hall and saw me pinned there. He freaked out, lunging for Abandon, but the entity merely laughed and disappeared. More time went by, and no Abandon, and things seemed good. Then one night, Sam was shoved down the stairs, and when I went to help him, Abandon became enraged and jealous, refusing to let me help Sam. Finally, I shouted at Abandon, telling him that he would never have me. He looked at me, and to this day, I will never forget the look on his face. He looked broken-hearted and sad. That shocked me so much that I was frozen there. He gently touched my face, then disappeared. I went to help Sam, and he was okay. Not long after that, Sam's mom pulled her crap about me having to leave for the second time, so I packed my stuff, called my parents, and arranged for them to come get me. A few months after I was at home, who shows up? Abandon. And by this time I'm so used to him I simply say, "Abandon, you are not welcome here. Leave my house." He laughed and bowed to me, saying, "For now, I will leave, my love," and he left. Months went by, and nothing. Then one night he returned while I was still asleep. He marked my ring finger, woke me up, and held up my hand to show me, and he said now I was officially his. I still have that mark, and to this day, he still follows me. I'll be 32 in a few months. I'm very happily married. I have to ward my house and myself and everyone around me against him. He's still around, still wanting me. This is my true story of why you should never play with Ouija boards. You might just find yourself permanently attached to a demon. That is just terrifying. That is terrifying. To have him just be like, "Nope, you're mine now, that's it." Because I guess all you can do is just try to vibe higher. Quite literally. Do a lot of meditation and make sure you're very clear that your white light will always protect you. Because those vibrations, the higher frequency you vibrate at, that's how you know you're ascending higher than those dark beings. So if you can assure yourself that your white light and your purity and your goodness will always conquer any negativity and badness in the world or darkness. So as long as you are super clear and super strong in your faith and in your belief in yourself and your strength and your purity, that's what's going to get you through it. That's what's going to ward off anything that's evil and anything that vibrates low, things that you don't want around you. So just do your best to be strong and confident in your white light, because that's what's going to keep you safe from this dark entity, whatever it might be. Just whatever you do, don't make some kind of deal with these dark entities, because they will take your soul. So just try and don't do that. Don't do that. Even like in dreams or in a daydream or anything, like if somebody comes to you and tries to make a deal with you saying, "You're mine now, and to get me to leave you alone, you have to give me something," just don't do it. Just don't do it. There are other ways that you can get rid of these people. Not people. There are other ways that you can get rid of these beings so that they're no longer attached to you and no longer harming you and making you suffer. So if you need help with that, I got you. But for now, just try to be strong in your white light. Tell him multiple times he's not welcome. Literally kick him the F out. Kick him out of your house. That is your place. Stand your ground. Alright? Don't back down. He might tell you that they're more powerful than you, but I promise you they're not. You can and will beat them. Just don't give up. And on that note, I think we've reached a good place to stop for today. So I hope you enjoyed these very spooky stories. I hope you enjoy my modified storytelling technique. Until next time, I love you.